Most people don't think about workplace safety when they think of psychologists, but I'm going to tell you about some events with psychologists that emphasize the importance of safety in forensic work. In 2008, a man with schizophrenia developed a delusion that his mother was being forced to wallow in feces. He decided to steal $40,000 and whisk her away to Hawaii. He went to his former psychiatrist's office to steal the money. When he arrived, he stabbed a psychologist to death and nearly killed his psychiatrist as well. The New York Sun reports asks if therapists are putting themselves at risk by treating mentally disturbed patients. The answer is yes. There is more risk in this field of work, which is why we need to be proactive in identifying and managing that risk. In 2008, an inmate at a nearby prison was serving 2 life sentences for kidnapping and rape of adult women. He was allowed to join the prison work crew, giving him contact with tools. When he didn't return to check in from his work assignment, corrections officers searched for him. Donna Fitzgerald was working overtime that day and did not bring a radio with her during the search. When she found him hiding in a shed, he jumped out and stabbed her 25 times. Her partially nude body was found slumped over a cart. One surprising example reminds us that those identified as criminals are not the only source of risk. In 2006, the Federal Correctional Institute in Tallahassee uncovered a long-running scheme of 6 federal correctional officers trading privileges and contraband with female inmates for sex. When agents arrived to arrest the corrections officers, they did not expect resistance because the indictment was secret. However, after 5 of the officers were taken peacefully into custody, the 6th used his personal handgun and began shooting at the agents there to detain him. He killed one agent in his mid-40s and injured a lieutenant with the Bureau of Prisons before he was killed. There were pre-doctoral psychology interns in the building when it went into lockdown. In 1979, Harry Reinhart, age 19, molested and murdered an 8-year-old girl. His sentence required treatment in a specialized treatment program for sex offenders. A month after his arrival at Florida State Hospital, the law changed to return the programs to prisons, but he was grandfathered in. He was deemed a treatment failure and was going to be sent back to prison. A few weeks before the event, 2 psychotherapists were hired to the ward and observed the staffing where the decision was made. Staff routinely escort patients to classes and activities alone. July 17, 1981, Pauline Kent was on one of those errands and never returned. When the shift changed at 3:30, they noticed her purse and keys were still there, and no one had seen her. The hospital administrator started a search, and he was seen rushing around the building at 4:30 with his hair on end. About an hour and a half later, she was found strangled to death. She'd worked for the state 30 years and was about to retire. One of the new psychotherapists came forward a few days later, remembering that after he'd entered the ward that day, an unescorted resident holding an ice bucket had knocked on the door, waiting to be let in. At that time, he hadn't remembered the rule that no resident should be walking around unescorted. Reinhart had been hiding, undetected, waiting for the new guy to let him in. He then spent days undetected on the ward until this fact came out. In October, the staff were still trying to have Reinhart removed from the hospital. Can you imagine showing up at the ward to work with him for months after? I am not listing the most recent or most terrifying events. I'm listing the ones at places where I've worked. Vigilance and safety precautions are a big part of our job. In many cases, it is up to us to assess risk and fight to prevent these types of events from happening.